shirt just for you. Honorary shirt I've ever seen.
That is. Good, okay. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Budget Advisory Board meeting for Wednesday, April 15th. For order. And at this time, I would ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Bowker, Mr. Kale,
President, Ms. Bowker is remote, right?
Well, we
I'm
have to do
here.
the roll call first.
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, you
I'm
gotta
here.
vote on it. Mr. DiGirolamo,
Here.
Ms. Jeffress,
Here.
Mr. Jeffress. Ms. Matilas Thompson. Here. Mr. Ortolani.
Here.
Chair Brown.
Here,
You have a quorum present. So you
Okay.
can vote for it.
we do have a quorum and a chair would entertain a motion to allow Melinda Bowker, who could not join us in person tonight, but has requested to participate via telecommunications. So that in order to do that, to make it official, we have to buy people that are in-person vote. So Chair would entertain a motion to allow her to participate via remotely.
Second.
Okay, by Oliver, second by Jason. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, welcome, Melinda.
Thank you all. Sorry I couldn't be there in person.
We understand. Next order of business is a meeting minutes from our March 18th meeting. It was very lengthy. We had a 3-hour meeting, a lot of meeting minutes. I want to thank staff and our
Me.
Prototype Incorporated did an excellent job. Hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to look over. Are there any additions, corrections to the meeting minutes? No discussion? Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 18th.
So moved.
Moved by Jason, seconded by Max. Okay, hearing no additions or corrections, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? Okay. The minutes are approved. Do we have anyone from the general public this evening? Okay, very good. Is there any old business to come before? Okay. Now we'll move right into new business. We have quite a bit to cover this evening. So at this point, I'm going to turn the agenda over to staff and let Laura and her team here and kind of walk us through what's going to happen during the next 4 phases, parts A through D of new business.
Chair Brown, good afternoon, everyone. Laura Reese, Director of Office Management and Budget. So today we talked about dedicating most of the meeting to your special projects. We know you've been working really hard and put a lot of effort in. The team put together packets of information that have all of your backup information here, including some stuff that's hot off the press from this morning. So we really wanted to make sure that all of the information was included in a easy to reference format. So the plan today is for the OMB team, we're gonna quickly take you through payroll projections just as fast as we can. We wanna make sure that you understand when you start looking at the packets in the month of May, how the personnel complement and all of that information is populated. So we're gonna go through all of the assumptions that are in those payroll projections tonight. But I'll try to do that very quickly, understanding you have a lot of information to share with each other. So the next item is we're just gonna go through the department budget reviews. There's a reference in your packet as to the order of the budget presentations and the different meetings in the month of May. Then we'll be talking about the targeted assignments, which is your opportunity to report back. Erica has been taking the lead on behalf of OMB and working very closely with you all and different members of our team. So she'll be facilitating that discussion. I was told at the beginning of this presentation that board member Calais would like to actually do a live version instead of referring to his notes. So what we'll probably do is we'll
Laura, not necessarily what I said.
Oh,
What I said is maybe I would suggest that every board member has a brief comment and recap, high level picture recap of what they worked on and what the output is. So they had an opportunity to take ownership and form their own statement. That's all.
Oh, yeah, so absolutely.
That was it.
And well,
I don't need to go through my presentation slide by slide.
Okay,
I can
okay.
give a brief recap
Okay.
based upon your work.
If there's a recap based upon that work in the backup, that's fine. If anyone wanted to go into the full presentations, we would ask that we pause to do the full presentations until the end of the high level recap. So that was sort of how we set up the format. If everyone's good with that, then Erica will facilitate that discussion. And then the chair will take us through a preparation facilitated discussion based on that to prepare for your joint meetings. So your first joint meetings with the city commission at, next week, Tuesday. So anything you all would want to share back with them would be the time for you to talk about that. So if that works for everyone, I will be going on item number 1. Is there anything you would like to say, Manager Williams? No. Or? No. You bet. Okay. So I would like to recognize in this room some of my colleagues that may be answering some questions during this presentation. We have our HR department in the corner over here. Did you want to introduce your team real quick? Or not? I mean.
Jerome Post, HR Director.
I'm Kristen Milligan, the Deputy HR Director.
Nikki Sampo, Benefits Manager.
If there's questions about HR and benefits, they're here.
And from Risk.
Okay. Then we have risk, so we'll be talking about. No, go ahead.
I'm Risk Manager. Assistant Risk Manager.
And then, so Parth Patel is our Assistant Budget Director. He's actually the guy behind the scenes on making all of this. He didn't choose to present today, but he's gonna be the backup in helping you with any of the questions along with Keith, who is our Assistant Budget Manager. So that's the team kind of behind the payroll projections. It's a large part of our budget, so that's why everyone's gonna be kind of answering questions together. All right, so with that, we've talked about this a couple of times, but we based a lot of this information on 2026 to start with. The majority of our general fund budget is actually in personnel services. So 63.2% of the budget is driven by payroll and benefit related. As our population has increased over the years, our FTEs have also increased. We've had a more limited increase in our general fund, while other funds have increased at a higher pace, primarily due to the opening of new water treatment plants, additional stormwater work that's being done. All of those FTEs are needed to support the additional infrastructure and operation. This is the general fund personnel complement growth over the years. Over the last 10 years, we've had growth of 139 positions. And of those, the majority or 91% have been in the police and fire departments, really to service the new population. Police, the number was 70, and for fire it was 58. We really closely monitor from year to year the growth in salaries and benefits versus the growth in ad valorem taxes. And so we consistently watch that, and we want the growth rate to remain relatively consistent because property taxes are our largest revenue source and personnel costs are our largest expenditure source. This sort of shares with you salaries and benefits as well as positions by labor group. It's an important part of the conversation because in the general fund, it is all but 14% or 402 employees are represented by a collective bargaining agreement. So the city has limited ability to change, wages and benefits for groups because those are all negotiated as part of collective bargaining. So the good news is we know exactly what to budget for those positions. The bad news is we don't have a lot of control if there's a need to make modifications without reopening negotiations and engaging with those groups. So the Teamsters contract and the Federation contracts both are recently approved. They continue through September 30 of 2028. So we'll know fiscal year 27 and fiscal 28 assumptions pretty solidly at this point. For IAFF and FOP, fiscal year 2027 is a year that is still unknown. 2026 was the last year that we knew of the actual wages and benefits. We're hoping to conclude those negotiations in the near future and have been partnering closely with our colleagues on that. So in the or in the budget packets that you see, we've had to make some assumptions for these groups. So for Management Confidential, Teamsters and Federation, we've assumed 3.5% cost of living adjustment as of that first pay period in October. And then the marriage or wage increase of 3% based on performance. So up to 3% is allowed. For IAFF and FOP, we also have a COLA or 75th percentile adjustment of 4 or 3.5%. And then the merit assumption is based on steps. We actually budget individual by individual. So I'll show you an example on the next step. This is the firefighter steps. A step could be 3% or it could be 5%, depending on, so a firefighter would be hired at one step and they would progress through the steps on their anniversary date. So the steps aren't all exactly the same. So we would budget based on the step that they're in for the year. Same with FOP, they also have a step plan and we would be budgeting based upon the step that they would be in fiscal year 2027. There's also on both of these some certification and assignment pays that you'll see. Those will be captured in the line item budget separate from salaries and wages. They'll be shown as special assignments or different line items, and that's what these represent. So for a firefighter who has a paramedic certification, they get 15% as certification pay, or somebody who has an EMT certification would have 5%. And for FOP, we have on-call units and specialty different types of on-call units, and based upon the unit they're in, they get different percent increases on top of wages, and those are benefits separate from the salaries line item. Another big driver of our personnel cost is health insurance. In fiscal year 2027, we're assuming for each full-time employee a contribution by the city of $20,887 towards the health plan in order to pay for health-related benefits. And there's some history over the past 10 years or so provided, and it shows the cost increase. I think everyone who, private or public sector has seen the cost of healthcare kind of increase. For our retirement plans, there are a variety of plans that people could be in. And so we know for each individual, based upon how they're tagged, what retirement plan they belong in. And police and fire, we get an annual required contribution every year. So an actuary completes a study and tells us what amount the city has to contribute for 2027. Based on that, we divide that annual required contribution by salaries, and that's how we budget for pension by position for fiscal year 2027. So it will end up being a percent of salaries. For general employees pension plan, same thing. For 401A, it's typically a percent of compensation as well. And then for FRS, is set by state legislature, and for fiscal year 27 is 13.59%. And this is the plan where all new employees come in. So our 401 is closed and our general employee pension plan is closed. So all general employees that aren't part of a police or fire pension are coming into the FRS plan. So you'll see some transition when you look at those line items where certain retiree health benefits are going down and FRS is coming up, and that's because of the transition from one plan to another. Okay. And here's the amounts over the past 10 years for each retirement. So in 2028, our actual amount that we contributed was 60 million. In 2027, we're planning on 75.8 or 75.5 million for all funds. And sometimes the question comes up in terms of the funded ratios. Our plans are well funded. One of the reasons they are well funded is because we had a special obligation bond that was issued in 2012 in the amount of 337 million or $0.8 million. And that was to fund the unfunded liability. And it ended up working out well for the city because we locked in at very low interest rates when we were paying a higher amount back to the pension plan. But that took our unfunded liability ratios to a very low level. We were at 100 and 111% funded in 2021. We had some expansion of benefits that occurred in the last round of union negotiations, so that that unfunded liability did increase a little bit at that point.
Laura, can I ask you, has that been paid off or when will that mature? Those special obligation bonds from 2012?
It was a
Yeah, 20.
21, I'm sorry.
I think it's 2032, but.
So it's 20 years,
twenty.
it's 20 years.
They're checking on that. I didn't have that number offhand, but I knew it was within our 10-year horizon. I think, so we'll get that number.
Okay. Thank you.
And so here's an overall picture of salaries and benefit growth in the general fund. Over the years, what I'd point you to is in fiscal year 25 to 27, because of the reorg, you're going to see different swings that have occurred. But if you look at the bottom line for 2027, overall, we're expecting a 5% increase in salaries over 2026 adopted. There's variances and we've kind of dug into those. Some of it, like for capital projects, there was a mid-year reorg where people moved into the department. So I'd say, you know, maybe not focus on the percent by department, but the overall percent is what we would want to.
It's also really important to compare this with the slide that Laura showed earlier, where she talks about how we plan for merit as well as the cost of living adjustment. So you notice that this percentage increase is actually lower than those combined numbers. And it's a lot, it reflects a lot about the turnover that we have within the organization and how salaries tend to reset with turnover in the organization.
This year, we've also had a merit increase for management staff to 3%. In prior years, there was more flexibility on what that percentage was, and this year is the first year that we've implemented and streamlined it, provided a cap.
And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Here's a question.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, it's very helpful. I think we have to all be aware of the growth of salaries and fringe benefits and how it's structured, so we can see where are the points of leverage. That's been my focus before. I know city staff and the city manager are looking at that very carefully. I have several specific questions or requests, and I think my colleagues would agree that it would be helpful to understand the big puzzle here and the different pieces. On public safety growth versus general fund, you expressed a number in number of FTEs. Can we get that same graph in terms of dollars cost, not in number of FTEs? I would be interested in that data point.
So over 10 years, what the salaries and wage growth has been in the public safety budgets?
No, page number 4, instead of expressing those percentages in FTEs, can we get that in dollar, in cost?
Yeah.
That's all.
For all of the groups, okay.
It might be slightly different because not everyone costs the same, even in big numbers. The next question on page 8, the cost of living and merit step assumption. So after what City Manager Riquel just mentioned, I'm wondering what percentage of employees get or got last year the merit step, the average? Is it 50% of employees? Is it 75? Is it 99%? I'd like to have this and possibly per department. I think it's important to know that merit is not being present and showing up for work again the next year, but to accomplish something particularly remarkable because there is already a cost of living increase. So I think like in the private sector, you'll get an A or gold medal for showing up again.
To that point, for management category 1 employees this year, we also revamped the employee personnel evaluation form to more closely tie merit to goals established at the beginning of the year with checkpoints at the middle of the year. So we're trying to make the correlation a lot stronger between achievements and merit.
And that's new, that's your leadership.
Yes,
Correct.
I will say that we have reinforced that and I think it was being done before, but at another level. We've elevated that significantly.
It's interesting to know the reality of it and how it, you know, it's been done, and a very simple percentage. How many of the employees get the merit of 3% that you get your projections from? I think that would be interesting for everybody. In terms of the high cost firefighters and FOP, I was always curious and I tried to get that information back in November in my high level picture. I'd love to know, and I'm gonna be a little stereotypical here. I wonder if we have more Indians than chiefs or more chiefs than Indians in departments that cost a lot of money. And I've seen some numbers on the office of the chief that seem to have, you know, being raised a lot in the past 3 or 4 years. So the question is, how many, if we can simplify, low management, but in terms of dollars. Yeah, in terms of entry level, middle management and top management. And we can make super categories, but that would be interesting, I think, across departments, because we know with that kind of data, where the high costs are. And if we are heavy, top heavy, for many reasons, that can be structural, that can be, we have less junior employees than seniority, and that can be sometimes good. I think it's important for every one of us to understand what's the cost repercussion on that in part of that big picture. And for FOP and firefighters, they represent half of the general fund, so that would be critical to get this information if that's possible. I think that's about it for me. I have no other question for the moment.
I've had a report back on special obligation months.
The measure was correct. It was like, I like the bonds mature in 2032.
2032, so that's 5 years, we got 5 years, yeah. And roughly annually, what are those payments? Just ballpark, you know, we know. They're looking that up. One thing I want to point out on, if you go to page 3, and it's on this Stantec financial forecasting model, I pointed out to staff earlier in pre-meeting, if you look at year 2025, that the revenue, property tax revenue jumps up to 40 million. I don't think that's we don't think that's accurate, so they're going to review that. If you look at that graph, it's a big jump, and we know taxes that 1 year did not, property tax. Yes, I point that out, even it's behind us, but still just on the graph.
And it seems different from what we saw on the previous Stantec projection that we kept showing.
So it was around 20 million.
20 million. So we'll have 5 years from now, 20 million freed up. To use. Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other, Melinda, any questions?
Yeah, and just one thing to note is that.
I'm
as you
okay,
look
thank you.
At the Stantec model, we've already factored for those funds rolling off at that time period. So the model already reflects that reduction in those years.
Right, but we've not obligated that money, just for modeling purposes.
For the model, we also anticipate that expenses will increase, so it offsets some of the expenditure.
So it's already spent in the model.
It's already factored into the model.
That goes very
Yeah.
fast.
20 million doesn't get you what it used to.
Yeah, the 20 million here and coming in
I
there.
wish I had 20 million in 5 years, I could already spend it.
Those people are fast.
Okay,
Okay, so the next item on the list is just, we wanted to make sure you understood the schedule for the department budget reviews. There's a tab in your packet. Looks like this. So we have additional departments this year and we are trying to figure out how to lump them together. So we lumped some of the easier, smaller ones in the first round. And then some of the ones where we thought it would take a longer time with utilities and some of the capital project items that are going on in the last group. So this is what you can plan on for the month of May for presentations. The departments have been meeting with the city manager on their budgets already. We spend our Fridays together. And so we're getting aligned and, letting her in on it. And then the next step is with you guys to share the information about what budgets look like. So, again, May 6th, 13th, and 20th, the regularly scheduled meeting, Charmaine, is 20th, right? Yes, so it says it on the top. So the 20th is one that counts for your attendance. And the other two are advertised as special meetings where, they're public meetings for everyone to attend, but if you aren't able to attend, it doesn't count against your attendance for the BAB rules or, the board rules, just keep in mind. So the rules aren't as strict for those two. And Charmaine does coordinate a light dinner for those meetings because we do ask you to come 3 Wednesdays in a row. So there'll be pizza or sandwiches or things like that. So that's all I have we'll send you the packets the Friday before. It's a lot of information you're going to get. So for those of you who are new to the BAB, if you have questions, please call me or call Parth. Anyone on the team is happy to walk you through what it means if you have questions. And if you have specific questions, if you'd like to send them to us in advance of the meeting, we'll make sure we send those to the directors so that they'll be prepared to answer those questions in the meeting. That's probably the most helpful way to handle it. So that's the format. Any questions on that?
No questions, just as chair. I know we've allowed, you show 5 to 7, but I would ask all my fellow board members to be prepared. I don't want to rush the department heads. I want to give them their fair due. So, I would say plan on till at least 8. I think we can get it done in maybe 2.5, but typically they do run over past 2 hours. And in fairness, they do a lot of work, department heads and their staff, and I want to give them adequate time to do those presentations. So if I would ask that you plan your evening accordingly with that anticipation, at least going to 8 o'clock.
No disco
But,
night.
With that, I'll turn it over to Erica Johnson, our Structural Innovation Manager, to lead us through the rest of the conversation.
Good evening. I think we can officially say we've crossed from afternoon to evening. I've been working over the last 2 months with each and every one of you to talk a little bit about these special assignments. So as a reminder, we had a handful of topics that were covered with each member taking each topic. So we covered things from affordability and cost of living, revenue loss, recovery and enhancement, including, special specific topics within each of those. Looking at expenditures, exploring our millage rate and benchmarking. And then as part of this, I know Olivier will also be sharing a little bit about his feedback from the Revenue Estimating Conference Committee. So with that, if you flip over to the second tab in your handout, I've prepared just a really high-level presentation. The only intent of this is to keep the conversation progressing and give everyone a moment to shine and share their research. I've included a few high-level bullets just based on our conversations that we've had, but I'm really going to turn it over to you to share everything or anything that you'd like on the topic. A few of you did share specific detailed presentations and research. If you look to the green tabs, that's where we can find all of that information. So if you'd like to point to that, just say, look to my name on your green tab and we can all dig into that together. For purposes of the one topic that was on the list that we're not covering today is the CRA. We're going to be covering that at a future meeting later this year. So
It was under Melissa's task, right?
I was.
No, not Melissa,
I believe.
Melinda, sorry.
And I know Melissa is not here, it looks like, so we will just continue the presentation without her and we can review that when she is with us. So.
Oh,
with
well,
that-
I'm here remotely. Sorry, Erica. But yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, I did
Melinda,
meet with
Melissa.
Okay.
Yeah,
Melinda is
Melinda,
remote,
yeah.
Melissa is
Excess
not here.
general fund balance and CRA, they contacted me and said, we'll be scheduling time for me later this year. I got that message from Erica and Laura. So just that's my update for now.
What do they mean later this year? Why can't they do it sooner than later?
Oh, so I can share back. So when we spoke with the VAB last time, the discussion was that the input back to the commission wouldn't happen until, remember the CRA was here when we were talking earlier in the year, and the input to the commission wouldn't happen back until after this fiscal year was done because they had 2 years of operating before they were gonna reevaluate if they were going to extend. So we weren't gonna weigh in this fiscal year, it would be sometime during the upcoming fiscal year in 2027.
Okay,
So it was just a
hopefully we'll have-
timing thing for when it would be appropriate to weigh in.
But Linda, what do you feel would be an adequate drop dead date month?
Well, we did actually meet, I did meet with Erica, Laura, and Chris back on February 12th, and there actually is some additional information I requested on the topic, and the messaging I got back last week is that they are still working to finalize that. And once they have those resources compiled, they were going to share it out with me and find a date for me. So I guess I was thinking it was probably, we were still looking at maybe, possibly next month or, but Erica, you can, I guess I was not thinking necessarily delayed until that much more, but that was the messaging I got back.
Yeah, so we were thinking, when I say later this year, I mean, maybe September timeframe, but
To put it into context, if I may, and I'm sure Melinda is on the same page, the idea behind this task, and the city commission asked Bob, was criteria of performance to be attached to reevaluation of the CRA. And to that effect, we have a little more time because it's not gonna come relevant before this 2-year period. So I think that's why it's not as time sensitive, but that doesn't mean that we can't make progress, and Melinda can't keep us updated on her thoughts towards that and share with the Bob. Right, Melinda?
Well, and the reason why I ask and point this out, I'm just walking back a timeline. Typically, November, December, we don't meet. Thinking ahead, January, early February is when the commission's priority workshop is, and that's when they usually might get some direction on discussion on setting that. So I would like to have the BAB ready before we, instead of waiting till the last month or the first month of the year, and give us at least 2 meetings to work through it. So I'm thinking no later than
Summer.
September. Yeah,
Or
but
even,
yeah, right.
even July or August. I think that's more realistic.
Yeah.
Right, Linda?
Sometime between.
That totally
when
sounds
the
fine for me. I
budget-
mean, I have to respect the staff, we did have a great meeting. There was more data though I requested, and I know that obviously we need a period of time for them to gather that and actually to see what's going on. But yeah, I think the summer, July, August, or September makes sense.
Okay, because the sense that I'm getting from the commission is that they're gonna look for a lot of input from this board to help them determine moving forward for what the next period will be.
So let's
Yeah,
tentatively add it to
agreed.
August.
Yes.
Work plan?
I
Okay,
think it's,
the CRA.
Thank you.
That sounds good.
so with that, let's dive in. So our first topic is affordability and cost of living, so I will hand it off. We are on page 3, or slide 3 of the second.
high level first.
Yes, because everything that we're doing has to do with cost of living. But there's a misspelling in my name.
There's two,
Yeah,
it's the T's and the L's.
Oh, okay, yes, it is a meter.
T's for that.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present this report, and special thank you to Erica for all of your help. I couldn't get my report done. Thank you for the opportunity. Okay. So do we have the option of just going over this one slide or?
So if you'd like to flip ahead to the green tab with Anid's name, it has her detailed level presentation that she provided earlier today. So if you'd like to follow along with her, you can follow along there.
So as we are looking at affordability and cost of living in the city of Fort Lauderdale, for this report, I focused on four major questions as we look under purpose and scope. One, what income is required to meet basic living expenses within the city? Two, which key cost drivers are macroeconomic versus locally driven? Three, how have taxes, fees, utilities, insurance, housing, and education-related costs changed? And the key question is, have resident incomes kept up over the past 3 years? On next slide, as we look here, we see the median household income for the area for Fort Lauderdale. And down below, we see actual estimated living wages. So median household income versus estimated income needed to meet the basic living needs here in the city. And this varies by households. If you notice, single adult, no child, the income required, and of course, all of the stats for this are from the living wages, the MIT living wages. Single adult, no child, 52,000. Single adult, one child. Two adults, no child, and then of course, two adults, one child. The numbers were looking really good right up until two adults added one child. So the cost
Is above.
say again?
Cost is above the
Yes,
median
the
household income.
cost above the median household income. And for the next slide, required income versus median household income. So did a comparison here. See, again, for the adults with no child, the requirements are right below the median household. But then once you throw in the child, it gets closer. And once you with two adults, one child, the cost of living surpasses median household income. So for the key drivers, we looked at, as we said, we're looking at macroeconomic drivers versus local drivers. We looked at three macroeconomic pressures. One, interest rate, regional housing inflation, and insurance. And for the local, rising property assessment, taxes, city utility rate increases, storm water, and so forth. On the next page, for macroeconomic drive number one, all over this report, the main driver of cost, as we all already know it, is housing. So here we have an example of the cost to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in the city. We have the cost from fiscal year 2021 to 2025. And you'll see there how the cost is rising well above Florida and the national as well. Next slide, the macro driver housing, that shows us the median price of homes sold within that time period. So the first one looking at rent and then looking at homes. And then for macroeconomic drivers, number two, inflation and insurance. The inflation within the area price rose 1% over the last 2 months, but 2.1% from February 25th to February 26th for the Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm area. And of course, with insurance, this continues to be as property values increase, so does insurance, with property values, natural disasters, since we live in hurricane capital, and of course, demand. And now, with the new FEMA map, the flood insurance costs, and of course, all these are relative to the price of the support. The next page shows the utilities, local fiscal impacts, utilities, taxes and fees, and so forth. The rates here that were provided to us earlier by the city. And another key cost, education related costs for families. For childcare, for one child, $11,636 annually. So of course, going back, that will
Double for 2 children.
for every child you add, double or cost. And we have some basic tuition rates here. For the state, see that the local and private costs. First, these are more for families with children. And that is a major cost for families, and it's not enough. To start doing some comparisons, I did down here the home price sold to median income ratio. So this ratio here is showing us that the home prices and the income, you notice over the whole 4 years, from 2021 to 2024, it is well above 6%. So this continues to show us this, the challenges of and the next page, we did some major comparisons for rent versus income, because renters, the cost of renting grew much faster. I have some percentages here for you. The first graph shows you notice here, the median household income was growing faster than rent up until 2023. And rent up, oh, okay. First, from 2023 to 2025, rent continued to outpace income. And the graph below, right there, this graph showing the rent to income ratio versus affordability threshold, the 30%, based on HUD, they recommend 30% max for housing. See that we are still below that threshold, but every year it continues to grow, and so so families are spending more and more on rent each year. So the next graph again, showing you the actual and recurrent income. So overall, the final analysis, resident incomes have risen over the past 3 years, but affordability did not, considering the macroeconomic pressures and local cost drivers. Resident income in Fort Lauderdale have not kept up over the last 2 years. While the nominal income increases, the combined impact of inflation, housing, market pressures, insurance, childcare, and so forth continues to erode affordability for many households. Therefore, income have not kept pace with true cost of living. Any questions?
Very thorough. But no surprises. I mean,
No.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the data confirms something we all feel and know through other people who struggle in the city. And we have heard that some even city employees can't afford our city in public safety. So what I would say is bravo for this in-depth analysis. I think in my analysis last year, high level, the task that I had in mind was exactly that, but maybe more specifically to see how much sanitation, utilities, and what the city controls impacts directly the cost of living, because the microeconomic pressure we can't control. But at the city level, there is a little degree of control, and we should be all aware and paying attention closely to that from the residents' point of view, rather than from the government growth point of view. I think that's exactly, you landed exactly there. And that's a concern, and you didn't go through District 2 versus District 1 or District 4, but I'm sure that picture is even, sharper and stings more for District 2. What do you think, colleagues, other board members?
Questions, any?
no, I think you're spot on, your comments. And it's a challenge,
Very big challenge.
Not just trying to stay ahead, even with land values, property, just for months. To make it to where for a developer to make it affordable for them to build, to allow the opportunity for affordable housing is a challenge even for developers. Yeah, the demand.
But it has to be at the core of our concern, I think, as Bob, as a voice of residents, to keep the commission and city staff acutely aware of that pressure. And when we talk about increasing the millage rate in, light of challenges for fiscal year 2027 or later years, we all need to think hard before saying, oh, well, we need to grow expenses, so we need to increase millage rate, even if it's a small increase. And remember, the millage rate comes on top of debt approved, sanitation, fire assessment. And I did an exercise I'd love to share next time if possible. I'll send at least the material about the compound tax rate of our residents. Marty Kiar, the Broward County City Appraiser, has some data available, and he compares all the Broward County cities, municipalities. I think the data is updated from 2025, and you'll see where Fort Lauderdale stands now in terms of 4119 that we always brag about keeping constant for the past 18 years. But when you add debt, voter approved debt, fire assessment that keeps increasing a lot, and Max, I think, covered that in his presentation later, you need to see the overall picture of the burden of residents. And we all, as residents, end up paying for that. So I think we need to keep that picture, that perspective from the residents at the core of our approach. If the BAB is not doing that, I don't know why we're here. Correct?
Yes.
Okay,
City.
Melinda, any comments before we move on?
And none from me, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So quickly, I love colors, sorry. I'm gonna report on the revenue estimating conference. We had 3 meetings with heads of department and their representatives. And basically the big picture is that revenue conference covers In the overall picture of all revenues, which balance the $1.2 billion of our city budget, the revenue estimating conference covers only 10% of that, 110 million for this year, fiscal year 2027. So keep that in the big picture. It's not a lot and there is not much leverage. I think there is other avenues of leverage where we can make much more of a difference, but I still try to find something positive, even if it's 10%. What I want you to remember is that this revenue grew slower at an annual 4 to 5% than the other streams of revenue, or even at Valorem revenue, 7%, 9%, 9.7%. So when we grow the revenues half of the ad valorem revenue, we might be concerned because then we're making the city budget or the general fund more reliant on ad valorem. And we all know that the boom of construction and the development is not the same as it was 3 years ago. It has slowed down. The lion's share of this big picture budget, 1.2 billion revenue, is intergovernmental charges for service, transfers, and miscellaneous, and it's more than 60%. Ad valorem only accounts for 20%. And finally, fire assessment, utility tax, and franchise fee represent 5%, 4%, and 3% respectively, and fines and forfeits and 1%. So the next chart, sorry. Here, it's a little busy, but graphically you see 85 million are collected out of those 110 million by finance, and they mainly consist of the service taxes and the franchise fee for utilities, gas, water, electricity. It grew an annual 6% over the past 4 years. That's the biggest chunk of money here, but only 1.9% versus last year is estimated for next year for this budget fiscal year 2027. So it's slowing down. So when you have the biggest share of the pie that's growing much less than before, and when you have the other small share of the pie that are growing fast, you need to keep your eye on the prize. There is some leverage, and we'll see it on the finance department revenues. But 85 million, the big picture is 12.9 million for fire rescue, police 1 million, DSD 7.9 million, mainly business tax, zoning reviews, etc. And parks and recs, mostly beach cabana rentals, and swim club, tennis lessons. We'll see that there is potential for growth there, but once again, it's on $3 million. So the big numbers are on finance, and there is not much leverage here, but we'll come to that. So when I go with perspective, I like seeing the evolution, not the instant picture of 2027. Those 110 million revenues steady increase in recent years, but they're only projected to grow 2.7% for fiscal year 2027 versus 2026 after our work and reports from the different departments. 78% of these revenues that strongly grew in recent 4 years directly impact the burden on all residents because it's all about electricity and water through taxes and franchise fees. And they are going to only grow 1.9% in fiscal year 2027 versus last year. And some minor revenue streams, swim club, tennis lessons, liens, and EMS fee collection have potential to grow more aggressively. So the key takeaways is there is a growth in revenues that's half slower this year than years before when you go back to 2023, 2024, 2025, and last year, and well below the same department ops expenses that I calculated and presented back in December. That was an annual 8%. Some departments, I think, need to step up, and they're already under the leadership of our new city manager, I think, getting there in that mindset that we need a culture of opportunity when it comes to optimizing revenue or at least better cost recovery. With appropriate market rates, we need to be benchmarking ourselves and not discover 5 years later, that business tax, it's so much lower than most cities. We need to anticipate, we need to stay up. And after that, we're stuck because we can't increase by regulation the business tax more than 5% a year. So we're in a bad position and we can't catch up fast enough. That's for business tax. So there is a shift that needs to happen. We don't have to become greedy, but we have to become more opportunistic. And I think in every level of our city government, leadership positions, everybody needs to get there. And you can call it cost recovery with all the limitation that entails, or the opportunity, and I'm sure on sponsorship, on special events, Chairman Brown will have very bold recommendations. That was his task, among others. So the review that we conducted with the departments over 3 meetings, good news is we didn't try to push them beyond their limits. We tried to sort of get a sense of what was the leverage between what OMB and their own estimate was. And there was generally a median number there that was reasonable. So we didn't push them to a limit where they could say, oh, we're gonna give you a great increase, and then it's not attainable, it's not realistic. But we uncovered already an extra 2.5, 2.4 million versus the initial OMB department estimate. So before starting the revenue conference, we had 2.4 million less anticipated fiscal year. So on 110 million, it's not a lot, but you know what? I'll take 2.4 million more rather than less. And there is a potential that I think can be expanded in fiscal year 2028 to more substantial extra revenue through targeted initiatives and rate updates. And I'm going to show you some examples. So I asked OMB to provide me with some benchmark from other cities. And I did some projections. So we know the liens. I think Linda Short, head of finance, already explained that she's going to put a proposal to the commission to increase the liens and, you know, don't do expedited versus slow, but and be closer to a benchmark. So that can generate 500K right there. You'll notice in my data, I accounted for projection based upon benchmark and not the highest of the cities, not the lowest, but the average in terms of fee or level. And then I counted for 15% more customers or cases. So if you have 500 or let's say 1,000 swim lessons this year, and it was always 1,000 for the past 5 years, I'm asking this mindset of developing the revenue with the help of strategic communication and any other resources to get 15% more than 1,000 customers. I don't think that's too much asking, especially in light of all the expenses and prestige of our new Swimming Hall of Fame. And I think there's a lot of marketing to be done to increase that. So my projection are based on each of these levers: fire inspection, tennis lessons, swim lessons, false alarm collected by police, and EMS fee. They're based upon what if plus 15% number of cases or liens and increasing the fee to an average market level. And we get to another 1.6 million above the baseline that we had this year. So 2.4 plus 1.6, we can have a 4 million. The spirit is even on $110 million revenue estimating conference, we need to get to a shift in our culture that's closer to private sector. I think the city commission will respond well to that as long as we are reasonable and we're just benchmarking ourselves. We shouldn't be the poorest of the poorest being Fort Lauderdale. We should not be the most expensive either in terms of fee and rates. But you notice that in my example, I didn't take the youth day camp or some other services that are for lower income people that I don't think we should necessarily increase. I'm talking about swim lessons or or diving lessons for which people already pay $500 or tennis lesson, $500 or even $1,000 per year. If those people decide that it's worth it, they probably can spend more, and we can find some more than 1,000 people interested in tennis lessons in the city out of 190,000 residents, I believe. So that's my wrap for revenue estimating conference reports. Any questions?
Oliver, one question on that one slide where you said revenue streams projected to growth, half slower this year. Did you identify one major reason for that loss, that decrease? Or is it a combination across?
There are lots of factors. I mean, the different heads of departments have different, explanations. I try to get a sense of the structure. Basically, that's what I wanted to, and I said it to OMB 2 months ago. I'd like to have a sense of how many EMS, we are charging, number of customers, so 700. That leads to the revenue that you have there. How many tennis lessons? So I don't know why we're so weak in terms of average value and average number of customers. Some areas you can't force people to get the ambulance, the transport, but maybe on the cost recovery, I don't know how much we recover, Chief Golden, on transportation from Medicare. Are we good in cost recovery?
So that's where the challenge is gonna lie, is the Medicare and Medicaid set the rate. So even though there was recently an ordinance change to increase what that fee
Doesn't
would
apply
be,
to those people.
it does not apply.
But they don't represent the lion's share, do they?
But they represent the majority of collection. The other ones don't have as high as collection ratio on them.
So, the mindset has its limitation, and we can't ask leadership to create miracles and to create revenues where we can't. But it's not a reason to notice after 5 years that business tax was so low that we were so below par compared to the benchmarks. And now we can't redress more than 5% a year. So we're trying to catch up. So I think we need to avoid that kind of situation in the future. And the culture shift, I think, under our city manager leadership should happen so that we can get more opportunistic and cost recovery oriented.
Thank you. Linda, anyone else, any questions?
That was excellent. Both presentations were great from my colleagues. Thank you, Olivier.
Just want to clarify that we had not upgraded the business tax fee since 2004.
Yeah.
So it's about 20 years.
Yeah, and I can't fathom how did that happen. I mean, I'm surprised that any BAB, board didn't pay attention to that. I know it's not a lot of money by itself, but if we are below par as much as that and outdated, I remember the last fire transportation fee was also 2014, the last update, Chief?
It's been a while.
Yeah.
2017.
Yeah, so I think moving forward, we can't change the past, but let's make sure that leadership keeps that, mindset and doesn't allow that to happen.
Could that be a political decision for the constituents on purpose? Or is it something that's just not?
Yeah, historically, it was a political decision. It
No,
came to the.
I don't think it's an overlook. I think it's more like, hey, we don't wanna, same with that,
And in fairness
there's a couple of our fees that are just.
to our past board,
We let people
board
say.
members, I think they recognized it, but the commission also was looking at the bigger picture of the assessed values and the increases of revenue coming in, and they were reluctant to
Yes.
raise those fees
Yeah.
because we had some pretty good
That makes sense.
revenue flow years.
So we're no longer in
Yeah.
that dynamic. We're no longer in that booming, ad valorem driven expansion. So we need to change our tack, I think.
I think Ross is still screaming about millage rates. I think I still hear him.
I think we'll have that on us too.
Yeah, he's the best.
Okay, next up.
Great, so if we wouldn't mind to our IT team, switching back to the first original presentation. Grab that clicker.
Sorry.
Right, we're flipping around today, keeping everyone on their toes. So the next, while they pull this up, the next presenter was gonna be keeping the conversation going about revenue loss recovery and enhancement. So Melissa Milroy, who's not here with us today, was assigned real estate development and P3 revenues, so we'll have to pick her brain at the next time that we see her at one of these meetings.
Did she work with staff?
She did, we did,
Okay.
we sent her some information, so I don't wanna steal her thunder, but we'll let her present that when she comes back. All right, and then the other presenter who was next on the list was Chair Brown, talking about event fees and sponsorship revenue.
I first apologize that we didn't have anything in the board packet, but it is scheduled to go to presented to the city commission this coming Tuesday for our recommendations from the special events group that were put together of stakeholders. We had 3 different meetings with Park and Rec and their special events committee and the stakeholders, primarily both from the special event industry, the promoters, as well as the beach improvement district folks and the Parks Board. There was quite early on in the process that they didn't want to raise fees for the Parks Board recommendation, but now we all came to the table. Basically, we put a matrix together. We're recommending that the event fee go for, based on the size of the impact of the event. The minimum is always $200 going up. This is for the application fee, to the minimum of $500 per day. And for a limited impact or small event to a moderate impact of $1,000 a day. So you can see that's an $800 a day shift to a major impact, which is like a Tortuga. That's to $1,500. So it's a $1,300 shift per day for the event. Then currently, like Tortuga was paying, this is over and above the cost recovery for police and fire, but they were paying on an average of about 13,000, huh?
13,700.
13,000. We had the recommendation was 50,000.
70.
Well, 70, then went to 50, got a lot of pushback. It's somewhere going to the commission now between 20 and 25,000 for the event. And it's going to be a lot of discussion at the commission level. Because they don't want to lose some of the bigger events. You know, the Tortuga and those things. So we'll see how it comes out. Once it gets published after tomorrow is when the agenda is published, correct? I will ask staff to send that, the memo from the city manager along with the fee structure and the matrix for us to take a look at it, and we can include it in the package. But I didn't want to get ahead of it since it was going to the commission. It's not coming, it won't be coming as a recommendation because it's coming from the parks and the Parks Board and the special event, but we're going to see some substantial increases of some generation of revenues and some cost projections with that.
I have a question. So back in December, you might remember I drilled down into the city-sponsored event and the private events. And I sort of approached the revenue that those private events, namely the Air Show, Tortuga, Flips, and Winterfest, generate. And it's an approach. It might be 110, it might be $100 million or $120 million with 2 million visitors. And I went through the price of the tickets that they published, the number of attendants that they publish, sometimes very freely and sometimes confidentially. And I think considering that Tortuga generates, in my estimate, $21 million, it's really a very small number. So I know the city commission is a little shy and it's a game of chicken. Oh, we're gonna move out if the city of Fort Lauderdale is not, welcoming us or increasing the fee. So it's a delicate balance. We don't want to lose those events, but in the same time, they need us, and Fort Lauderdale as an attraction itself.
Right.
So.
And you're right, it is a delicate balance. We don't want to lose what we're calling signature events or the major events. I think there's more opportunity because of the bed tax and the food and sale revenue tax that it generates, we need to see our fair proportion coming back, because it goes, the bed tax goes to the county. And right now, we're not getting our fair share.
So one of.
And we're hosting the event and the money's being spent here.
So Chairman, I add a little boldly probably, and with my, how green I am on the BAB, but private sector oriented as well from my 30 years of experience. I had naively thought that maybe we should introduce that notion to the city commission that with the stakes of the budget that those events, generate for private, enterprises who make money on the back of our residents and visitors and tourists, maybe a special city tax like some other cities like Miami Beach have would actually, so I don't know the regulatory framework in which we can do that, but at least I think we should maybe consider some avenues or where we can actually have another special event week. And that tax doesn't need to apply when the event is not going on. I mean, if it's air show week, it's going on because you're coming in and you're going to see the air show from the W Hotel, wherever you are staying as a tourist. Have we ever thought about those things?
Yeah, so when we shared about revenues and what we're limited to a few meetings ago, we went through what we're allowed to. We can only tax if it's allowed by the state. If not, it can only be for cost recovery. Remember, we went through all the state statutes and what's required of the city. That would be one of those items where we were not grandfathered in, like Miami Beach. They were very lucky they had that tax in place when the sunset for everybody else.
So it's gonna be limited by state regulation, so there is no avenue, no way, Raquel, that we can consider something innovative and fair and I mean, generating revenue. Those people are generating a lot of revenue for those companies.
Yeah, it's governed by legislative action, so we can always advocate for that, and it's part of our legislative program. But the likelihood of that happening is probably very slim.
Okay.
So, we recognize the limitations and the challenges, and we are seeking to at least cover the impact generated by these events.
And we do recover the load on public safety, dollar per dollar.
Yes, so for public safety, costs are borne by the event.
Including overtime, if there is some.
Yes.
And before the event starts, they have to escrow 105% of those estimated costs.
So there is a good collection return.
One of the things that we are working on and we've had some challenges with is trying to engage with a firm that could help us with sponsorships for these major events that are city produced events, so not Tortuga. We're exploring some other opportunities. We've run into a couple hurdles, but that's something that we're still working toward.
And on that level, regulation is not an obstacle. It's pretty open. So it's private sector demand and supply, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, will that be going out perhaps as a request for proposal
It has.
to vendors to be a third party? I know in other cities it's been very successful. You have people that specialize in getting those sponsorship fees because they know who the players are in the private sector.
And they have access.
Yes, and they have
They
access.
know the
Yeah.
people.
It's like a marketing company
Yes,
or those.
absolutely.
Yes, we did go out to bid for that, and on the upcoming agenda, we are asking the commission to consider rejecting the sole proposal that came in. We're going to revamp the scope and go back out and probably do some more targeted outreach to see if we can get a vendor that would suit our needs.
So that would be an impact if there is any fruitful negotiation on fiscal year 2028, not 2027, right?
I wouldn't bank on sponsorships for this upcoming budget.
But 2028 is.
I think we should have something in place before fiscal 28.
Great.
Why do you think only one vendor responded back? I mean, there's so many companies out there in the marketing field. And it's always troubling to me. We get very few, when you go out, very few responses back to the city on our request for proposals. But
Well, I turn it over to Ben Rogers. He might have more insight on what the business community shared.
Who's the lead on this for the city?
This would go through our Parks and Recreation Department. However, looking to see if our Economic Development Division, we are soon to have new leadership in place there, could potentially work on this in coordination with Parks and Recreation.
But to my question, why do you feel only one vendor responded back?
I think the feedback that staff received is that the structure that was out there was more just solely commission based. And I think there were some apprehensions from some of the providers that there may be challenge with securing public event sponsorships, and that they're gonna do a bunch of work and then not have a payoff on their side for it. So a lot of the feedback revolved around that. If the city would provide like a base funding level or kind of a committed fee that they would pay for the service. And so that's the things we're evaluating now to figure out how to tweak it.
So it could be a compound between a minimum and then a commission above.
Correct.
So I think the proposer wanted a retainer. And I think it was at a level that we were not anticipating, so I think we just need to revamp the scope.
On a national level, do you think we're getting our message out to the sports marketing community of all the opportunities that are available here?
Yeah.
Have we-
Stratcom should be instrumental in that too, right? I mean, am I wrong in marketing to the right target markets and getting a return on this?
Absolutely, I think it's a collaborative effort. We're doing a lot more marketing of our sports opportunities, sports tourism, lifestyle.
Which is totally on brand, so it should not be so unnatural or challenging, I think. Okay, well, that's encouraging.
Okay,
Do you have any idea of the potential of those sponsorship opportunities, or it's way too early to see? If the response was a little more positive.
I think it's very early, and I think we also, at the same time, wanna look at naming rights opportunities. And I think if we package sponsorships for events with naming rights, I think we might capture a bigger audience in terms of interest, so.
Encouraging.
definitely, I think we all recognize that there is a market out there that we're not tapping into. How we tap into that market is a big question, but I'm sure we can figure, there's some avenues.
And some of our smaller, more routine annual events have dedicated sponsors.
Examples?
Bank of America,
Bank of-
the Starlight Musicals, St. Patrick's Day.
And they are national, I mean, do they negotiate at a national level, or regional or local? I think there is a lot of untapped potential there. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy as, us talking about it right now in this room, but if we can do some progress on that, make some progress, sure that would.
I was happy to see, I don't know if it's the event organizer or if the city was involved, but with some of the diving competition coming up, it had Speedo as one of the sponsors in it. And I don't know if we're getting any of that money from the city or or the event organizers getting.
Do we have someone at the city that runs events? I should know that.
We have a special events administrative or permitting arm in our Parks and Recreation.
Yes.
Department.
Just from being in that world in Los Angeles, as the music business, it is a tough world. Tough to make any money in, tough to run, and it's a small world. And when you get into sponsorships, it's a very small pool of people that have the relationships with the head of brand at all of these departments and all these companies. It's just very difficult world to just kind of dip your toe in and expect results. Just saying that. It's tough.
Well, and I think
It's
that's
super
what,
tough. It's low hanging fruit, but it's super tough and extremely capital intensive to get going. Really gonna do it right and expect money from it. So you just have to figure out where we can do things that we don't have to go to that level, because we're gonna have to hire somebody that's.
well, I think that's the key is finding, we have to hire someone. and they get a cut of the share, that's fine. But they're the experts, and to put it on city staff and the special events group, the permitting section, they don't have the expertise or the networking or know who to reach out to. And that's why when you get a third party vendor.
I think the equivalent of that in the private sector probably makes more money than you think to get at that level.
What's that?
The equivalent in the private sector, like the head of events at like a Netflix and is making a lot of.
Oh, I know.
A lot.
Yeah.
But I think the avenue of sports marketing firm who have the right contacts would know how to approach that framework, even if they cost money to hire. If there's a good return on investment, I think it will help, because we can't expect Parks and Rec's leadership to be versed in that kind of negotiation and environment. Like you say, I've worked at international level in marketing and including with sport marketing events with Coca-Cola and people like Red Bull. And so it's a cutthroat, you're right. I think having a marketing firm specializing in sport marketing would probably be the best leverage if we can establish a good collaboration and framework.
Their fees and what they charge is just, I think all of the numbers in this, when you start going down that road, you're gonna realize really high, really tough.
Let's
To get
at
them
least-
involved in, unless you have someone that's nice that used to be a big time event or a big time agent or big time market person, like, oh, I'll help you city out for less than $500,000 or $1 million a year plus. But
Tap into my
But if we get a
network.
$500,000 coming in,
Yeah.
all set, yeah.
you tap into mine, but I already know it's probably.
Okay, thank you for that update, and Raquel, thank you for. Okay, so staff, once, if you would send out after tomorrow, to the committee, it's going to the commission. That's going as the work, for the conference meeting, correct? And then it'll come back at a later date for ordinance change. Thank you.
Right, next up is cost optimization and efficiency, so I'll hand it over.
Sure. So not to toot my own horn or be self-important, but I think my topic will impact the budget more than all of the rest combined.
That's modest.
Not today, but in the future. So we focused on AI. And I don't have a presentation. I'm gonna give some statistics, kind of quiz the room, and then I don't have a ton of suggestions beyond they're already doing a pretty good job. And you have to be really careful about the pace of enacting AI. So just curious in the room, how many people are utilizing AI on a daily basis for their business? Well, you're not allowed to say because it's supposed to be.
We have a Microsoft Copilot subscription.
I know you're supposed to only be using no, I know, that's what we went through and I'll touch on that. How we're adopting Copilot, which a lot of companies are. Does anybody know, McKinsey did a study of AI specifically in cities. Does anybody, what do you think the percentage of tasks on a daily basis? This isn't percentage of jobs that could go away, but percentage of tasks that today could be automated at cities.
Is it more than 50%?
It's at 50% on the high end. So they say, McKinsey said with today's technology, half the things you're doing on a task level could be automated with AI. I think AI is way more powerful than any of us are currently utilizing, especially people in higher senior staff positions. That's just how it is. They also estimate about 30% of city operational budget. Right now, 30% could be cut. If we really, this is the only thing we did in these meetings every week. They're saying with today's technology, we could just sit here and cut our budget by 30%. That's like without cutting too much staff. For us, as I think Raquel knows, there's been a rollout of Copilot, which is what people are using. If you're in the Microsoft environment, it's just the one that above board, it all has to kind of tie in. It's friendly that way. It's harder to go outside and make a case to use a ChatGPT or a Claude. I saw something that Raquel had or her staff had presented to the commission to sort of give them an update of, hey, here's where we're at. And it makes a lot of sense. Basically, they're saying, hey, proof of concept, what's working, what's not, monitor the feedback. I'm sure you're already doing this. I don't want to tell you something you're not already doing, but there's probably a level of specific ROI we need to eventually get to when you're enacting AI, because these things aren't cheap. It's not an insignificant number. I think we're probably at this point spending $1 million or so a year on the licenses. I forget, do you remember the number? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it was It was something like that. It was like $1 million a year for licenses.
We budgeted $1 million a year, but part of that was our implementation costs.
Okay. It's not insignificant, but it's again, it's important not to roll it all out and say, hey, we need licenses for everybody, because you do that, then nobody uses it. And then all of a sudden you're just sitting there going in circles. But I think if we continue to roll it out the way that we are, it's gonna have a really significant impact. There was a couple different studies, and I'll just touch on implementation. Pittsburgh did something, they automated their traffic lights, and they said 25% increase in traffic just from automating them through AI on their traffic lights. They were looking at it. I'll say planning and zoning personally, day to day, I'm a commercial real estate broker. I deal with cities. I saw the chief of fire, I got an annoying email, and he saw the look on my face when we were waiting for the elevator. He said, what was that? And a different city, not to be named, their planning and zoning department did something that was annoying or gave me an answer I didn't want. So I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee as well, and we brought in an affordable housing developer and asked them, hey, what's your biggest headache? We want to be a partner for you at Fort Lauderdale. What didn't you like? Be honest. Said the communication was great from the planning department. The people there are friendly, they're on it, they're fast. But it's the going back and forth on 150-page plans that they submittals to the city, that there's a little thing that you find, and then there's a resubmission process that could take a month at a time. So affordable housing projects can take 10 years when it's all said and done. The planning department, I think, is low-hanging fruit. I'm sure we're looking at this. That's just an example. That's the one that touches me every single day. Jeff Bezos, about a month ago, was at a big conference in Miami. I don't know if any of you saw this, and it went viral because he said, I'm trying to build a house, and why can I not just use AI to get things approved in 10 days? I'm sitting here for months and I have no response from the city of Miami. That went a little viral. Elon, when he left Doge, said that the only thing he sees as a path forward for cutting through political red tape and getting society and budgets and governments to normalize is AI and technology. So I just reiterating the importance of it. I'm not saying we're not doing it. I don't need to tell Raquel and her staff what to do. They seem to be implementing it very nicely. I said that when I was on the Zooms and calls. It's cautious, but not complacent. I'd say that's where we need to be. Another study said only 30% of cities around the world, around the country, are implementing AI at the level that they should be. I hope we're in that 30 or beyond and we'll be ahead of the curve, because I think it's gonna save us money. I know the technology eventually is gonna save us a ton of money. Hopefully it doesn't get into staff cuts. Hopefully it just gets it into efficiencies and other ways that we can cut money in the budget. So from my perspective on the board, I would just say to just stay on it. I don't think there was nothing I saw. You could, and I'm sure, again, you're probably already doing this. My interaction with the staff was so positive and everybody's so on it. It's, I would say maybe at a department level, you're not gonna appoint an AI person. Maybe there's an AI czar for each department. Maybe certain departments have people and you look at the senior staff down, you're like, they're just never gonna do AI. But I think there's always a way, or maybe there's a person in the department, younger, older, whatever, that's
Champion.
using it every day. And if you identify, again, it's just a suggestion, you run the city great, but maybe there's a way that you can improve implementation. I know in being in operations at a big company, when I was in the music business, it was just headache after headache to implement things that we spent a ton of money on to get in for B2B software and in place. So that's my spiel. If anybody has questions or comments, great, otherwise we can move on.
Rich, is there a way, you use the word staff cuts, but I don't like that word.
Efficiency.
Yeah, the staff efficiency that can be absorbed through attrition as the implementation of AI comes into play over a period of time.
I think our next step is to identify the most beneficial use cases for AI by department and try to hone in on how we can see some savings, whether it's through personnel expenditures or whether we can get more productivity out of each department for that specific use case. I think that's our next level. I know that our development services team, and Chris, you could probably talk about this better than I can, definitely looking into what you're describing. You wanna just share really quick?
Yeah, so we've demoed several platforms. Even our Lauderbuild platform, which is what we currently use for our plan reviews, has a module that we've looked at. Really to do that initial cursory review and provide some of that easy, kind of low-hanging feedback right off the bat for these plans, completeness reviews, basic zoning reviews, things like that. Some of our things are very intricate. You get into some intent-based code and things like that. It's a little bit harder, but I think we'll get
Yeah.
there. But we want to adopt that as a solution to make that intake, that initial step a lot more efficient, faster, even allow people to do some reviews ahead of time before they submit to make sure that they're on the right track. So there's,
Is there, I mean, I'm sure there's, again, I don't want to get too into the weeds, this to take forever, but I'm sure there's also human review that also has to happen, right? It's like, you know, you can use it, but then you're like, wait, I think someone's gotta review this anyway, and it's sort of redundant, and that's not your fault, I think that's just where it's at,
that's what we're finding.
but I know we're trying.
And I'm not sure if Ron shared this with you when you all met, but we've been talking about human-centered AI, the importance of still, we're the subject matter experts on a lot of things, and AI is still learning, learning our organization, learning the world. And so we're making sure that as we're presenting information to the public, there's still a human that
Filter.
is verifying the information. And in addition to what Chris shared, we're looking at things like our call centers. So utility billing calls, being able to filter through some of those initial intake of those calls, our overall call center. So we're looking at ways that we can use AI in a way that helps our existing staff to be able to quickly respond and provide a more comprehensive response to our neighbors.
I wanted to make one quick point.
Sure.
To Rich's point before, so I actually just today, for my real estate brokerage, rolled out a fully functioning AI app for all of our real estate agents. The idea behind it, we use something called Abacus.ai. The beauty of it is that it has something called Deep Agent that I use when it goes to like deep research. And ultimately, whatever the task is, you type it into this one LLM. The second you type it in, it will actually reroute to the model that will best answer that question, right? So ultimately, utilizing it and rolling it out for our brokerage had nothing to do with cutting costs. It had everything to do with taking away the minutia, increasing efficiencies, and then increasing our vertical revenue. That was, we wanted to focus on marketing as a huge tool for us. Closing deals is a huge idea for us. So instead of telling everybody, this is going to replace you, we called it our broker's brain, our AI. So now our agents who might have a question on a contract at 11 o'clock at night can feed it into this robotic
Yeah.
process automation and RPA. It can read signatures, it can read wet signatures, it can read all of this
It's more
stuff in
powerful, I think, than
if it's in
people
compliance or not.
understand, especially if people aren't in the technology generation, whatever, now we're all in the technology generation, but I just, again, this conversation can go on forever, but the point was that our city's doing a good job, cause you don't wanna just blanket license 150 and ask the budget for that. And the commission's doing a good job making us give them feedback, but I don't wanna be complacent, and we're not, that I saw, so I think we're in a good path.
So I think those are very important point, but in order to land somewhere and stop talking about it in generic terms, I think as Bob, and to actually have an impact as well towards the city commission, I think identifying some project pilots specific with outcomes in terms of efficiency percentage, speed of processing something, or even money saved in some way.
Yeah, I think that's what.
I think that's where we need to land, and enough of generic discussion, because we all love AI, we talk about it over dinner. But I
So
think
they are, I didn't get to enough, but they're doing a very good job of that, and in her first point, like she was saying, she's gonna get specific to each staff and say, hey, what are those things? So they're doing a really good
love
job.
to see something as soon as Bob can see beyond what you've shared with them.
Yeah,
Because I think we're all interested in that, but show me the money, or show me the quality, and the outcome. Not the description of how it works. I think we'll be more impactful towards the city commission as well, if we mention that at high level as one of the things that city staff and Bob are concerned about.
Right, and,
We need to land.
right.
Enough
I
of the
totally agree.
outlying conversation.
they are, I promise you, they're doing a good job. They have, and they have licenses.
I'm convinced of it. I'd like to see the money.
Well, and at the same time, encourage, change, make sure the culture of the staff and the employees aren't fearful of it, they're gonna lose their job over it, because there's ways to attrition over a period of time. And it's more about efficiency and making their jobs easier without having that mindset of losing their job.
Or helping them be better.
Yeah.
That's an incentive too.
Correct.
So that it goes hand in hand.
By the way, merit
Yeah.
could include in some departments an AI metric. You know, if there is an implementation, if you did really well and you saved a lot of quality and outcomes in terms of efficiencies, your merit is really deserved. And so link those two together. And I think we don't need to explain that to Raquel, but
That'd be a challenge for you with contractual agreements.
let's see some specific pilot project with quantification of quality or impact in terms of budget cuts or efficiencies.
Okay. In the interest of
Thank you,
time, I guess.
Rich.
The next element of this discussion on revenue loss recovery and enhancement is business tax. I know Ms. Perryman Jones is not here today and I don't want to steal her thunder either, but I will just at a really high level, we had a good conversation about this with our community services team. Business tax fees will be raising 5% on July 1st. Per our Florida state statutes, this can only be raised by a maximum of 5% every other year. And so some of the thoughts that she shared with us and are on this slide, again, I'll let her elaborate at a future date. But we're really, since we're already moving forward with this increase, there's an opportunity there to provide an enhanced level of service to our local businesses to go along with this increased fee. You know, we had our director, Portia Williams on the call, and she had mentioned that, you know, we have a new city reorganization that puts economic development and business tax in the same department. So that allows for further opportunity for more collaboration on this effort. So I will leave it at that until she's able to join us and share more detailed thoughts.
Refresh my memory or our memory that in 2027 budget, that 5% increase on the business tax side equates to how much do we have a projection?
Offhand.
The rec revenues, I think incorporate it. So you turn to the revenue estimating conference. I think that was one of the items
It's on the second page. So if you flip to, there's a tab called 27 Revenue Estimating Conference Committee Summary. It's on the back side of that page, top row.
Was it related to the HDL company's 9-year schedule, the impact? I had a 1 million over 9 years.
It looks like the 2025, the 2026 budget is 335 and the recommendation is 37 after the increase.
Oh,
200K?
So
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what the revenue estimating conference committee recommended. So OMB had estimated 3.9 million based on the increase, but I think that they weren't sure about the adoption, or I don't remember the conversation particularly, do you?
Remember as well, but I don't.
it's okay.
Okay, so it's around 200,000 is what the estimated increase is.
I'm just gonna add a few pieces of information here. If you'll remember back in the January meeting, we had a presentation talking about potential new revenue enhancements. So we put together 2 slides here to show you what's already been implemented, what's in progress, and what's gonna be under consideration. So for implemented revenue enhancements, recently, I'm saying this a little bit broadly, over the last year or so. You know, we've seen enhancements to our vacation rental fee, most recently our business tax fee and fire ambulance transport fees. Those ones were very recent. We're currently, finance is working on restructuring our bank account interest structure. Our development review fees, specialty permit fees, tennis fees, and then the beach food and beverage service permit. Some of the enhancements that are in progress are looking at enhancing our lean research fee. And also our event permit fees, which we already just talked about a few slides ago. In terms of those that are under consideration and we're currently exploring would be our film permits, code enforcement administrative fee, athletic fees, aquatic center membership fees. Again, some of these that we've already heard discussed a little bit this evening. Dock utilities, commercial yachts. I don't want to read these all word for word, but you can see there's several that we're also exploring for future.
Could we have some numbers behind, I mean, in terms of potential to sort of evaluate where the big numbers are? You know, when it comes to commercial yacht fees or athletic fees and aquatic center membership and code enforcement, I went in detail because I was exposed to it through the RSD revenue conference, but would be interesting to know what those can represent in terms of dollars.
Absolutely.
To add, Madam Chair, I think we can also share what the implemented enhancements are projected to yield. So you all have a summary of what that is.
Do you have the number in mind?
Oh, well, we already have baked this in to our projections.
Okay.
These are things that we've already taken to the commission for approval or discussed with the BAB. This is part of.
So it's built into the budget,
As
in
we're building it
process,
now,
okay.
yes.
With that, I'm gonna hand it over, and if our IT team could switch over to his special presentation.
budget reduction.
Let's swap out presentations here just a second. Do you need the keyboard?
Okay.
And also get started by saying, my slides are in the fourth to last tab under my name. Budget reduction scenarios. And actually, I'll start also by prefacing that what I set out to do at the outset and after discussing with Laura and Erica was perhaps not so much scenarios, but basically a framework. Given that when some crisis comes, hopefully it's not coming, but the magnitude of it is unknown and it will take a lot of work by a team of people such as OMB over several months, to work it out. So really what I'm presenting largely is a framework and frameworks based on what cities around the nation have typically done. So I just wanted to start with some general principles, sort of bottom line up front. And these principles that you see, are actually, sorry, itchy finger that is moving around. Okay. These principles that I set out here are actually kind of simple. But in the midst of a crisis, when we have to cut, we sometimes forget about that long view of that we need to avoid short-term fixes that increase our long-term costs. We want to protect the high priority initiatives that people have been working on for years. I put as examples just the police and fire IT initiative, which is important. The capital project reforms that we're doing. So we don't want to see all of that work go by the wayside when we have a crisis. Generally, we want to implement changes in programs and operations that make our government more effective, long-term structural balance. And the last point on this page came from a friend who has been a CFO and budget director in big cities. And he said, never waste a crisis, by which he meant that at the time that things are bad and tough, we do have the opportunity to do some things that we couldn't do when times are good, but that really may serve us well, sneaky in the long run. So in terms of past approaches by the city of Fort Lauderdale, and this is largely based on Laura and Erica, we have, of course, tried to avoid across the board cuts, so that if we look at a 10% cut that might be needed overall, we are still looking at that agency by agency and saying, is that feasible? Is that something we should do or not? So we're not just taking a sort of a meat cleaver, down the line, but we're being targeted in what we do. And we often look back at the enhancements from recent years and if they're working, and also if they might be rolled back if they do not seem to be working well. But the risk, of course, is that our most recent initiatives are the ones that we have formulated to address our pressing problems. So we need to be careful that rolling back those things that might be our biggest productivity enhancements. I just wanted to review here. These are some of the typical short-term strategies that governments do. I likened it to stop the bleeding. You know, things are bad. We need to do something to step in now. So obviously, things like freezing hiring and salaries, freezing travel and training, these are typical approaches, and we would probably need to do something, some of these to, you know, to start addressing a crisis. And of course, short-term revenue strategies, which I've likened to dressing that wound, trying to stop the bleeding and patch it up and bandage it. Tapping reserve funds, increasing fines and fees, which the city has done a lot of work on and has, you know, has all the options at hand, and so on. But beyond that, we want to get to longer term tools. I just listed some of them, along with their trade-offs. Of course, you want to get to more targeted cuts at, you know, low priority, low impact programs, be a little more surgical and strategic, things like process reengineering, expanding IT. But these things will take a little longer time. So I think inevitably we would be doing some of those short-term fixes and then moving toward longer-term solutions such as these. Still more strategies, which I've used just to create kind of an inventory of things to look at if we should find ourselves in fiscal distress. So again, as varied as looking for areas of consistent surplus. I did want to highlight the third one from the bottom, which is strengthening collection of taxes, fees, and fines, because we've talked a lot about making sure our fees are appropriate. But we also want to make sure that we're collecting what is owed to us. The last one also on the list bears a little bit of explanation because it's different. It's a little more ambitious that at the time that we might find some kind of fiscal challenge, we still want to fund things that will pay off over the long term. So that's the idea of the innovation fund for things with demonstrated payback. It is hard to justify increases at the time we're having fiscal crisis, but it also can help make a package of cuts more palatable at the same time.
To your, to your third bottom bullet point, strengthening collections when it talks about taxes, fees, and fines.
Yeah.
I think one avenue, and it was discussed last night at the Council of Civic Association, is the lien amnesty program. It's worked just the opposite now, to where corporations that own properties or out-of-state companies, they're not fixing up their properties, they get special magistrate liens put on it, and then they just drag it out and don't fix the properties, let the fines accumulate, because they know then they can come in at a later date under the lien amnesty program and get an 85% reduction. So I think I would encourage staff to, when they make a recommendation to City Commission on continuing that program, that perhaps they look at only making it available if you're a homesteaded resident instead of an out-of-state property owner. Because we're losing a lot of money, and I know the intent was to get that high number off the books, but it's working just the opposite in some cases.
And there are also some, I've been privy to it, and I talked to Chris Cooper back then, in code enforcement from even residents. Sometimes there are some loopholes to, you know, avoid code enforcement fines and renew the process and delay. So I think collection is sometimes tricky there too. And lots of residents know the tricks. So I think we need to address that so that we don't get, you know, screwed. Sorry for my French.
Go ahead, but I just want to point that out, that it's coming from even the concerned residents about that program.
Thank you. And this last slide of slides is largely about longer term approaches. They're not the kind of things you can do immediately, but longer term approaches to budget more strategically. Different names for these frameworks: outcome budgeting, priority-based budgeting, but their commonality is that they're trying to encourage us to go into the base rather than just the increments, to look deeply at everything and not just at the at the margins that we normally look at. This is just a chart describing some of the conceptual differences between traditional or incremental budgeting and outcome budgeting. So you're trying to look at the future rather than just adjusting what we did last year. The cycle of outcome budgeting, one of the things I point out is the idea of a request for results, trying to encourage agencies to collaboratively make proposals to address the high priority issues of the city. And of course, we use a lot of these outcome-based techniques, can build on them. We align our budget requests with the strategic plan, mission priorities, and the agency business plans. All of these, the outcome-based budgeting is definitely about starting with the plan and the city's priorities and molding all of your budget decisions around them. We conduct a community survey, which is a critical part of the priority setting exercise. We have the 5 priorities, and we do, as a matter of course, have decision packages, usually for, I think, enhancements, but they can also provoke votes. And finally, this is just a few other things, different flavors of periodic agency review budgeting, for example, is kind of doing zero-based budgeting on a cycle, trying to probe into the base of each agency. Very difficult to do annually, maybe if you do it on a cycle of 5 years. So anyhow, just different frameworks and tools for fiscal austerity.
Any questions, Melinda?
Great presentation. Thanks, Jason. None from me.
Thank you.
I like it. I like the fact that we're looking at it outside the box from a different perspective of how we.
I celebrate that because it's a very good framework. I think in terms of leadership, I'm sure it's a great tool as well to, reopen the mind of our city government leaders. But I'm wondering if we can get some examples, land on some things that are actually being implemented. Because there are lots of, great ideas there, here and there, but which one have been applied and have shown what kind of success? I think, outcome, impact, again, quantification. I like the idea of a great concept or best practice. Can we get an example of one of the cities? I mean, you work in DC, right? So are there some example we can find or that we can benchmark ourselves with in some specific areas to apply some of those principles?
Sure we can. And actually, I'm willing to do more work on this.
I think that would land somewhere where when we show that to the city commission, whatever behind the scene staff work is about would be very changeable because it can sound very academic and it's very practical. We can make it practical.
Yeah. Laura's making a point. One of the gurus, I guess, of outcome-based budgeting is Andrew Klein, who was budget director in Baltimore, and so we could draw more on his work. One of the reasons I didn't go as deeply into options for us, though, is a lot of those cities have big expenditures for human services, health, Medicaid, schools, which we don't have because they're either done by Broward County or the SUS.
We could probably pick what's relevant versus what's not at our scale, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think it would be interesting. For one, I'd like to see one example or two of those great, out of the box ideas. Okay.
And I will say we have cheated off of some of those cities as we go to conferences and learn more about some of the cool things that other cities have done or cities who faced a crisis and overcame that crisis. That's how we started our program-based budgeting, from learning what other cities are doing and bringing it back here. So we're always trying to bring those new initiatives to the city of Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, and to add on what Yvette said, some of the work that we do, and the manager's seen this in the recent meetings with her, it's really internal focused. We don't share everything we do, you know, back at the BAB meeting, it would be a little too much. But we do dig in at a program-based level to see revenues, expenses, and then the outcomes by program. And we dig in and we do that like with the departments and then in the meeting with the manager with some extensive packages put together, which really does get into the base as Jason's talking about. It would take far too much time to bring all of that back here. It's already
How
hard
about
to get
one?
through. Yeah,
How about one?
yeah, yeah,
Not
well,
all of
that'd
it.
be great.
One, and it shows, it illustrates, I think for everybody, beyond concept, it's a proof of concept.
Okay,
And I think Bob, you know, would appreciate getting whatever your internal process is.
Yep.
Some examples, specific examples. It's like the AI, need to see a pilot, need to see how it works. It's illustration, it's concrete, it's real. I think Bob can have access to one or two,
absolutely.
and you can preserve confidentiality, I'm sure.
Well, nothing's confidential, it's just, it's a lot.
No, I
Right.
didn't say, I say one, two.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, colleagues.
I can share, I really like this, all the presentations, but one of the takeaways that I got from this one, I love the shift conversation from what to keep rather than what to cut.
Mhm.
And we're doing some of these things already.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah.
I would think so.
People think the BAB doesn't do anything. Okay, let's proceed because we're at 2 hours.
We have one last presenter, so I will turn it over.
Thank you. All right, so I had a great meeting with Laura and Erica, a little while ago. Actually, one of the things that I'd initially had presented to you, was great, actually getting the feedback very immediately that some of the numbers that I had originally proposed did not take into account the fact that our city goes through an ebb and flow throughout the day, and that service levels obviously change with not only the amount of residents that we have, but the amount of traffic that we have in the city every day for people that live, work here, and then leave the city at the end of the day. So I had the honor of doing some analysis on millage rate policy and benchmarking analysis. So just did a quick executive summary here on the key findings. We talked about, Olivier mentioned it before, our millage rate, the 4.19, has been frozen for 19 years. That ranks 27th of 32 in Broward. So the service demand, obviously, like we alluded to before, driven by, you know, up to 500,000 daily population, with 190,000 residents at the time.
Can you explain the methodology of how we come to that number? The 522 versus 189 or 90?
So we utilize a software called Placer AI. We actually presented this as part of our goal setting this year with our city commission. And so it has some software and methodology that it uses to track how many people are in and travel throughout the city of Fort Lauderdale. So while that includes residents, it also includes commuters, tourists, people that are traveling within our city. So we really leverage that technology to come to that number.
Yeah, I'd like to see what's behind the black box, because I'm not doubting the number, but and when you do the benchmark with other cities like Miami Beach, Tampa, St. Petersburg, do they use the same software comparison? Because then, you know, the benchmark that we establish on per capita don't mean anything, and then we can't compare with other cities because they might have a different software, different black box, different method of approaching the transit and tourists and visiting. So I'd like to see what's behind that box, really.
Yeah, and I can actually answer one of those points tonight. We have some preliminary numbers that we always look at as part of our goal setting presentation. And when we look at the comparator cities, we're using the same technology,
Okay.
same platform. So yeah, it is apples to apples in that regard.
So and what you'll see over the course of the presentation is I really did try to put it as Olivier had spoken and we talked about in, I think it was in December, or I think it was December, was having a snapshot of good, better, best and putting them into these 3 different baskets. So you'll see that theme repeated over and over, but on the executive summary, at least for recommendations, good, we maintain millage, raise fire fee to around 425, which adds about $5 million in new revenue. Better, moderate millage increase to 4.5, generating 24. And obviously best would be optimal millage at 4.75 plus a fire fee of 425, generating up to 40 million, which we could added into for strategic growth. So my speaking notes, I'll do this. So the Fort Lauderdale current state background details, millage rates at 4.119. This is the operating millage only. The voter approved debt service millage of 0.23 is separate and not under the board's purview. The $1.2 billion total budget includes enterprise funds, which is including water, sewer, parking, etc. General fund of $520.5 million is funded primarily by property taxes and state shared revenue. Fire assessments at $403 per unit, which is a non-ad valorem assessment charged per residential unit, and funds fire rescue operations and separate from millage funded budget. And then the $63.5 billion tax value. Each mill generates approximately $63.5 million in revenue before adjustments for a 95% collection rate, yielding about 60 million per mill. And then I just try to do a quick graph. I was trying to keep it visually pleasing and not like just jamming a bunch of stuff onto a slide to make it look too hectic. And really just get down to the nitty gritty of it, but it just shows you a comparison of millage rate comparison between like cities. I know initially Erica and Laura, when we had met, I think some of the things some of the peer cities that I had added, we were talking solely on topography, and I wanted to keep it somewhere that was a better comparison than some of the other initial ones. So it was again a lot of collaboration there between all of us. Okay, now into the Broward County fire fee comparison. The Fort Lauderdale's $403 fee ranks third highest among large Broward cities, behind Miramar at $475 and Pembroke Pines at $408. This means that there's less room for fire fee increases compared to millage rate increases, since we're already close to the top. Many cities with higher millage rates also have lower fire fees, and they fund more through ad valorem taxes. But some cities like Plantation, Hillsborough Beach have no fire assessment at all, and fire is fully funded through general millage. So the strategic insight here is that the combination of low millage and high fire fee creates an imbalanced revenue structure, and that adjusts the millage rate, making it more stable lever for long-term revenue growth as it scales with property value appreciation. And then the tale of two populations. We have a very unique challenge with Fort Lauderdale. So the residential population is 189,583. This is what determines our tax base. Property owners pay taxes based on assessed value. The daily average population is 522,246. This is who we actually serve. Workers, visitors, beachgoers, convention attendees, cruise passengers are all using city services. The math, if you take the 522 daily divided by 190 that are our residents, you come to about 2.75%. And that means that Fort Lauderdale serves nearly 3 times its resident population daily. With 571 sworn officers, that number may have changed, but with 571 sworn officers serving 522,000 people daily, we have 1.09 officers per 1,000 residents, which is below the peer average of 1.4.
This is for police or public safety?
Public safety.
Okay.
And then we talked in our last meeting about what keeps us up at night. And Chief Golan had, I remember asking him very specifically about what's that major problem. And it's not about the city growing outwardly, but about the verticality of Fort Lauderdale. So I wanted to add that in there as well. That Fort Lauderdale's development pattern is shifting from horizontal single family homes and strip malls into vertical high rises that are mixed use towers. This vertical development concentrates more people in less space, increasing service demand density. So for fire rescue, high-rise fires require specialized equipment and more personnel, whether that be aerial apparatus or evacuation logistics. And then for police, there's a dense vertical community. Those communities create different public safety patterns. There's more calls per acre. This trend will accelerate the gap between revenue based on assessed value and our service costs based on population density. And then wanted to just kind of give a very quick overview as to each scenario. Good being very conservative, you maintain the millage rate, there's no change into its 20th year. A modest increase of the fire assessment and projected revenue sits around 5 million. Better, as I talked in the executive summary, is an increase to millage rate at 4.5. No change to the fire assessment, but that increased revenue is in the ballpark of $24 million. And our best scenario is an increase in millage, which is still below our peer average, a modest increase to fire assessment, which would give us a projected revenue of up to $40 million. Last thing, that was really it. Those are all my sources. I tried to keep it as concise as possible.
Good job.
Thank you. I'm seeing some smiles from staff, that's good.
We did not write this.
So is there a recommendation, Max, is there a recommendation or is there a sense that we should go one way or another in the difficult conversation that we, city staff might have with the city commission in regard with the potential correction of our millage rate? That's my first question. The other question I have is, again, I looked at the tax rate overall, and Marty Kiar has on his website a comparative of 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 of the overall millage rate, if you will. When you consider all the elements, there is Broward County millage rate, the board, the school boards. I mean, I have that on my own property tax assessment. But then, why did you focus only on the fire and we didn't see the increase in sanitation? And because I pay a lot, I mean, it's not 400, but it's $260 and it's increasing for sanitation. So why don't we try to have the overall tax rate and benchmark ourselves as Marty Kiar gives the numbers out there. And Fort Lauderdale stands still in a good position at almost 1.85% versus, some cities are around 2.1% overall tax rate versus the value of your property. I'm talking about homestead properties, obviously. So I think, not to demean anything about your analysis, but one is, what is the recommendation? What is most likely to land with the city commission in regards with whatever challenges Raquel and city staff have? We stand tech predicting that we're running out of money this year. And the second question is, can we actually change our approach to an overall tax rate and not look at this 41193 and fire assessment, but look at the overall picture that the residents end up paying anyway? Debt approve or not, park bond or not, if tomorrow there is a city hall that needs to be paid by the resident at some point after due process, it will add to the affordability factor and the cost of living for the residents. So I think the BAB should look at that overall picture and not stick only to 41193 frozen for 19 years, because I think it's a fallacy.
Are there things we look at to that point? The most stark thing in that was how much we support residents that don't live here. Do you guys look at other cities that have that same dichotomy and say, hey, are there certain things, but it's not like we have tolls coming in, we do the New York thing with the tolls in Manhattan, but are there certain levers that we can pull from a tax standpoint that impact them more than us? I guess that would be a city sales tax or whatever else that is. I'm not saying to do any of that, I'm just wondering what levers we can pull to say, hey, this isn't fair. Because I think if I'm a commissioner politically, I would say, why am I raising the millage rate? If any constituents see this, they're gonna say, why do you keep raising my taxes to support people who don't live here?
Exactly.
And that would be how I would respond as a constituent. I would say that now. I don't know if does the city look at that and say, how do we benchmark against other cities?
How did Miami Beach do, Raquel?
Yeah, there's a good example. Like,
what's your miracle?
Well, I will say that Miami Beach has a variety of revenue sources that aren't necessarily available to the city of Fort Lauderdale, and that to me is one of the biggest distinctions. So resort tax, and Laura's also familiar, having worked in Miami Beach in the budget office there.
yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, and I think that
Yeah, I'm just
if we
curious.
could tap into revenue sources that are tied to the tourism element that we have in our city that's driving a lot of.
Why
the
can't we? I don't know if you're treading lightly right now, but why can't we?
I mean, so we're prohibited by state law, so, you know.
Oh, it's state, it's not the, I thought it
Yeah,
was
so
something
the
the county.
state law, it sunsetted where we weren't charging resort tax and new resort taxes.
I remember
went
something.
charged, right? But what I would suggest, which we haven't talked about as a team yet, is parking fees, right? But it ends up impacting residents and non-residents, but sometimes you can take a return on investment transfer from the parking fund and increase that. So
Yeah.
people who come into your city pay higher fees, but then it can impact businesses,
Yeah, it's a
right?
lot of
So
conundrum.
there's a lot of discussion
Cause
about.
then you're gonna have somebody that says, oh, I can't drive to the beach on a Tuesday cause it's $50. And right now it's,
But you could have exemption like an homestead for residents. I mean, I have a beach parking and
I
I
can't believe how
pay
cheap
less.
it is here
Then the
compared to other cities
businesses
I've lived.
can complain that, you know, now I don't
No,
have people come to my
True.
business, so it's a delicate balance, right?
Sure.
I know we do residential rates, that benefits our own population and those coming in pay a higher rate, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a bigger conversation, obviously. I just didn't know if there were certain levers and like you said, some of them we just can't do.
So that to finish, I really wanna take that point home. Overall taxation rate, and there is a county, that's the main part. But there is beyond the 41193, there is according to my my property tax trim and multi-years data, there is a 7% between the debt, the voter approved debt, the fire assessment and the stormwater. That's 7% added to the 41193. So looking at it, even ignoring the county level, county debt, county school, hospital district, water district, canals and children's services, I think we should get in a culture of looking at the overall tax trim that every resident gets, homestead or not, and see how much city policies impact that. And when we have increased so much sanitation in the past 3 years, that affects my bill. I mean, I've seen it. I came in poor 17 years ago in this house, and I'm paying a lot even for sanitation and fire. So I think I'm not the only one concerned about that.
Well, part of the sanitation is out of our control because of the cost of disposal from the vendors that dispose the waste, correct?
How about the contracts? How do we negotiate those contracts as well, right?
Well, I think that the sanitation discussion is evolving, especially with the solid waste authority conversation happening at the county. So I think we're at a stage where we're definitely looking at how we can save money. And I think time will tell as that discussion unfolds a little bit more at the commissioning level.
And part of that is, I drive through some of these neighborhoods on trash pickup. What is it called?
Yeah.
And I saw one day that they were cleaning out a house and they had so much special trash pickup that it filled up the entire back of the truck with the claw that the city's paying for in the Victoria Park neighborhood. And there's.
It's once a month.
Yeah, it's once, and it's quite expensive when condos aren't paying that, when they clean up their, they have to pay to have it removed privately. I think a lot of homeowners are taking advantage of that, especially yard waste on palm fronds and everything, that because you're a homeowner, you get that benefit, but commercial and residential property taxpayers aren't afforded that. And I know it's a touchy political subject to get away with that, but that could help reduce some cost and put the burden back on the property owner to dispose of their own yard waste.
Yeah, I see washing machines and all sort of crap every month in my neighborhood. And it seems like it's not even a garage sale, so you're right, there's maybe taking advantage of that a little bit.
So we keep moving on, because I know we're going late. But the plan is, now that we have a product, and I want to expose it to the city commission, I spoke with staff part of this meeting. The intent is not so much at the meeting on Tuesday, talk about any of this, but show them the product and then come back in the June meeting, correct? When we do that and get more into detail about that, if that's agreeable with the.
I would have a suggestion. I think sometimes to show is better than saying you're doing it. I think what we saw today is an example of great collaboration among BAB members, doing each their research and sharing back and working with staff. If we could give a flavor of that, not necessarily going into the specific theme, but maybe listing at high level what we have been working with city staff, what we are thinking about, and we come to you, City Commission, in June with concrete recommendation or communication, I think we would land somewhere, we would hit the mark. Otherwise, it's gonna be very fuzzy and they're gonna think that we are a market research company or a big strategy, McKinsey kind of stuff, and they're not gonna respond very well, knowing those individuals. So I would really suggest that we get a high level, maybe through the chairman, of examples, really, when we talk about AI, pilots, land somewhere and go millage rate. Let's not hesitate to say, we've looked at the picture and there are some recommendation maybe about maintaining the millage rate, but also raising the fire fee, or to do a reduction and increase the fire fee. So if we illustrate our direction of travel and work and present a high level, covering each and every one of those, I think will be a very strong case for, okay, they're working on something and we're gonna see some meat in June. Does it appeal to anybody here? No?
I mean, I like that approach too. I don't know what's gonna happen Tuesday. Normally, this could be different than the first meeting, especially with City Hall discussion. And from what could be trying to engage the BAB in from the commission, certain commissioners.
You're getting me a great bridge, Chairman Brown.
Yeah.
Oh,
Melinda?
Yeah, no, I think great points, and I like the thoughts that you're having, Olivier, regarding June and just showing what we can offer as a group. And I don't know if this is the appropriate time, Chair, but I don't know if we've moved on to communications or the Joint City Commission workshop preparation. But I did want to.
No, we haven't yet because we.
Not yet.
Still
Okay, yeah,
revenue
I'll wait.
Estimating conference committee updates.
Okay, gotcha. I'll wait till then. I do have a comment on City Hall.
I'm sorry.
You're in joint city commission.
Yeah, we're doing that
Okay.
now. We're preparing. That's what we're talking about, Melinda.
Oh, okay. I thought that we were in that section, but so
Yes, you're right.
yeah, so apologies, Chair, but yeah, one thing that I just did want to communicate, I know this is a difficult topic, and I know we brought it up briefly in the past. But I was appointed by Commissioner Sorensen to the BAB. And obviously I'm in touch with quite a few people in District 4, being the neighborhood president for downtown. Commissioner Sorensen, flat out asked me on a phone call. Well, I won't share, look, bottom line, multiple questions to me about what is the BAB position on City Hall, and it's becoming pretty loud. And I guess I'm just, I know we haven't had the time to put this on the agenda and reflect properly. I guess I just want to know, Chair, your thoughts or anyone else's thoughts as we will be in that joint meeting on this coming Tuesday, which is also the day they are projected to approve the initial agreement with the developer for City Hall. And I do think, absolutely, there will be several commissioners who will draw us into this conversation. So I just wanted to put that out there in preparation for our joint meeting.
Well, as chair and I've thought about this because I anticipate this being an issue. First of all, we're appointed by the commissioners. We take direction from the dais, the complete, our task come from the commission. And if their direction are to task us to look at our options, then that would be something that we could do. We have not had any presentations. So for us to make recommendations on Tuesday on how we feel, I think would be very inappropriate. At the same time, I think we have to make sure that we stay within the ordinance or the enabling ordinance that guides this board. I know it's very, very vague on the language, but to be asked what are our recommendations without having fully looked at all our options, I mean, the numbers are changing daily from what I'm hearing.
So if I may, Chairman, you may remember that 2 sessions ago, I broached the subject and I said maybe, and I asked some questions to city manager about what was the current set of information and facts that are out there. I think it would be, to echo your thinking, appropriate at least that since it impacts or would impact by hundreds of millions of dollars affordability for residents, it would behoove the BAB to have a formal presentation prepared by staff about what is the current set of data and information that have been discussed, and the options, the impact that it could have financially. And it may evolve over time, but there are lots of conversation happening. And I don't think the BAB should be a stranger to those conversations. And I agree with Melinda, my commissioner also has echoed the same sentiment. And I think if they're looking for BAB to have a position on those affordability issues, by the way, I checked with the city attorney, it falls under our purview. There is no gray line here. So I think in the view of the residents, we should be informed at least, and we should have a formal presentation as soon as possible by city commission, by the city staff about those options. Then we can decide whether or not we want to have an opinion, and we can wait for the city commission to ask us formally to have one, but we should be prepared and not be blindsided. That's my recommendation. I don't know how my colleagues feel about that. But we should not be ignorant about 200 or 300 millions of dollars that will, the financing that will impact at some point, maybe not next year and maybe not in 2 years. And I know those conversations are happening and commissioners are talking about it, and we should be informed, at least as a BAB. So
And I agree the commissioners talk, but they're not, unless they're giving you direction. Raquel, what do they want what engagement do they want from this board? We can't self-engage.
I have not been asked by the commission to inquire with the Budget Advisory Board in terms of weighing in on the City Hall project. The commission would typically not go through me to communicate to the Budget Advisory Board. I have not seen that since my time here with the city. I don't know if there's any precedent for that.
We talk about getting the information at least and being privy to what the discussions are about based upon facts, and those facts might evolve. But I think we'd rather have that presentation sooner than later, because if there is a commitment being voted next Tuesday, as my little bird informed me, and we can't go back because we're committed to the project that they are contemplating, then the BAB will have had no say and no information. We shouldn't be in that position. I think we should be informed, we should be privy, and then we can decide to recommend or say something if the city commission asks our opinion, but at least we are knowledgeable and we are informed. Again, this impacts the city residents for a long time. Whatever the financing is, it's a heavy decision. We're not talking about $2 million revenue estimating conference. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
And I see you have your hand raised, but in all fairness, all the board does anyone feel comfortable they have enough informed decision as we sit tonight to make a recommendation?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
But we can have some presented for next session by city staff if we desire so.
when you say next session, next,
The next BAB
Tuesday?
meeting. No, we're not gonna get anything before Tuesday.
okay.
The problem is, if something gets voted on Tuesday, the BAB has been totally absent of this conversation and our
So-
constituents would not be proud of this.
What about a simple communication to the commission, not necessarily requesting all of this, or if you want to, but just letting them know that it's a concern and that we would like something to change, then we can enact what we want to enact.
I think
But
it's going to be,
towards
I think
tonight-
it's going to be discussed Tuesday. From what I heard, one of the commissioners was gonna, from a call that he had of District 4. Melinda, you were on that call. weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah,
And what did Commissioner Sorensen say, how he was gonna engage the BAB Tuesday?
well, I don't think he actually said, I can't recall him saying on the call, but obviously I've been in touch with him. Oops, sorry. And yeah, I mean, he's gonna bring it up to us and ask our, if we have been contemplating the impact and, if we haven't, why not? And I'll be honest, like, I think that, I completely agree with everyone that we're not ready to take a position. But given that we have an opportunity to be engaging with the commission, I just think, maybe similar to what someone else said, this is a concern. We do think it should fall under our purview to look into and to be engaged with. And I think that we should be positive with the commission about saying, this is something that should fall under our purview. And, it's something that we need more information on, but we want to be engaged on it. And I guess that,
I totally agree.
Do an official,
Totally agree with
say
that.
that in person positively.
Yeah.
Or just send a nice note to the commission and.
There's no need, we don't have to send a note.
And I
we're
think that
meeting
that's
with them on
where we're at
Tuesday.
right now.
Okay, but let's make sure that we do that and Chairman Brown
I
can
think-
communicate that.
Seems like that's gonna happen.
A good opportunity, at least to not be.
I think we're gonna have that engagement conversation.
I would say my position on the board is that we keep it positive and do not, for lack of a better phrase, look like whiners. Like, why aren't we, I would just keep it positive to them in the meeting if it comes up. Anybody can do what they want, I can't control anybody. I would just say it would represent the board better if we're professional about it in a setting like that. In that we wanna make sure that we collaborate together on this and we're appreciative of all the information we've gotten thus far. And then we can say whatever else, but we know what we're trying to do is to have our input matter. So I just think there's ways to go about that. We wanna
Totally
be
agree
positive.
with the positive and the opportunistic way of showing that we can add value, because I think that's what the BAB should be for the city commission. Commissioner Glassman last year asked us to have an opinion on some other,
Yes.
matters that and you echoed that, Chairman. May I suggest that on top of, communicating our interest, positive interest and concern from the standpoint of the resident that we represent, we might also ask city staff to make, maybe prepare a short executive summary of the facts and the options that are being considered right now in time for Tuesday, so that we are informed as board members. Is that something?
Do you guys need to prepare that or is that readily available somewhere?
So last week, we shared with the city commission, was it last week? Yeah. Two weeks ago, okay,
Time flies.
April 7th.
Yes.
There was a discussion with the commission. I did share a letter to the commission on April 2nd. We can share that with the Budget Advisory Board. There were certain documents shared at the city commission for discussion purposes based on the status of the negotiations at the time. Also, there will be an interim agreement on the agenda for April 21st, which was mentioned earlier today, so we can share that item once the agenda is published. So all of this information is already publicly
there.
available, and we can share that with the
Can we
budget.
get that as a package so that we are at least informed individually and have a sort of an education about that?
And Bill, will you sort of be the one speaking to this if it comes up in the meeting? I just want us to look organized and not like
Yeah.
start, I don't want it to be this way.
Chairman is the
Yeah.
perfect be.
No.
And then I think you know how to appropriately
But,
handle it. Okay.
okay, and if they'll get, if staff, we can't direct staff, okay, to do anything.
We can request
Technically, but we can
information.
request.
Okay.
Let me just finish, I'm explaining, sir. So we can request, but I think come Tuesday, we're gonna have to I'm gonna have to, as chair, hopefully have some clarification from the commission, the entire, the majority of the commission as to the direction how they would like to see the BAB engaged. And then trying to get a meeting, we already have 3 meetings in May. It'd have to be a special meeting. And then special meetings have to be noticed, 5 days in advance or
72 hours.
72 hours, 3 days, yeah. But it can't happen before Tuesday, have a special meeting. But if you'll get that information to us,
Once the agenda is published.
but I don't think it's gonna be complete information as far as, when it looks at the 101 building or the One East Broward building on rehab costs versus a new versus, do you have that much detail to provide at this point?
We were asked by the commission not to evaluate alternatives. We will share with you information that is already public.
Okay,
That's some things work.
Okay,
okay,
well, at least that's something we all can agree on.
okay. And I would encourage it as individual citizens and that if you wanna, you can speak during the public meeting, not as a BAB member. And then when the interim agreement discussion comes up, 'cause I know several people want it postponed. But that's your right and that's part of democracy, that you're not precluded as long as you're not representing the BAB. Is that a fair and adequate statement?
Crystal clear for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
But can we do we know if the city commission is gonna commit to one option versus another? And there is no point of return after that on Tuesday? That's my question. Mikael.
So what is being put forward on the evening agenda is an interim agreement that would commit the city to engage with the developer on pre-development work and the associated expenditures. Staff, upon approval of an interim agreement, will commence negotiations for a comprehensive agreement, which would be sort of the second step in the project. And at that point, we would be committing to the full development of City Hall.
So we're not fully committed even if the city commission decides to move forward on Tuesday, to be clear for me?
So the interim agreement is based on pre-development work, so pre-construction work, so design, planning.
And what kind of money does that entail? What kind of commitment, financial commitment does it represent?
About 18 million, up to 18 million. So depending on, the outcomes and the milestones, that is the financial obligation under the interim agreement.
Yeah, I think that we have to just accept that our input is behind on this and it's just as much our fault as anybody else's. So I don't know that we've been stiff-armed from certain things, but we're also, and we're past our time. We're sort of not being great efficient board members by bringing this up, having this long conversation. I
This
feel like we
2
should-
months ago.
Okay, but it's just getting to the point where we're just gonna have to do our best, but it seems like everybody's dancing around the fact that it's just Tuesday is going to be a definitive thing and it's going, I'm not
I
saying.
haven't danced around the fact, and I'm not trying to.
How can you say this is what's happening?
It's clear from the direction 2 months ago, the commission to the city manager, that what option they wanted to go with.
Exactly, that's what I'm
And that's
agreeing
what
with you.
since that point in time, up until the last city commission conference meeting, they have been working on putting the terms together and getting that data and to present to the commission. And since that last meeting and this coming Tuesday, some things have even changed that they're gonna present to the commission and inform the commission on. Is that fair to say? as far as the option on New City Hall.
I think there have been some slight modifications to what was shared for discussion purposes, but no major deviations from the feedback provided by the commission at that time, which was for the concept B. And without the document, you may not have context on what that means, but we have been negotiating, probably still negotiating the final details right now with staff upstairs, and I think that whatever is presented to the commission will largely reflect the discussion that was had with the commission on April 7th.
So if you, go ahead.
So some of you are newer to the Budget Advisory Board, so I just did want to add one more piece of information. A few years ago, when City Hall was being demolished and the consideration for additional sites were being explored, there's many boards in the city, and the public outreach piece was assigned to the infrastructure advisory board. So OMB worked really closely with the ITF to go through a very thorough public process where we had public workshops, presenting a variety of those issues. And there's a whole webpage I'll send you that's dedicated to the results of all the public input that was garnered. So it's not that there wasn't public input, it just wasn't through the BAB. It was the ITF was selected to lead that effort on behalf of the city.
Are you suggesting that the city commission might ask this infrastructure board to look at the option of City Hall instead of asking Bob to do
So
it?
they did.
They already did that.
So they did that. So the city commission typically, when you guys have your joint meeting with them, you'll meet 3 times a year. They're going to ask you what they would like you to look at.
Sure.
In the case of City Hall, they requested that the infrastructure task force look at that because it was an infrastructure project. So there was a comprehensive public engagement process that occurred a couple of years ago. And OMB was part of that, facilitating with a third party consultant as well. And so that did take place before they made the decision on City Hall, but it was done through a different,
Channel.
it was done through ITF versus Budget Advisory Board.
I just
Yeah.
want to point out that I think in light of all the work we've done about affordability, millage rate policy decisions that can be hard and have lots of implication on our residents, and we represent residents, the voice of the resident, the customers. I think without imposing our views, we can still have a voice and decide, and the city commission can decide to listen to whomever they want to decide, listen. But I think we need to play our role.
At what points though? I mean,
Well,
our
it's
voice
it's
is,
a little late. I
Sort
broached
of
the
finished
subject
there. I think
2
we're
months
gonna have
ago,
to
and I was told that.
trust the chair can guide us how we need to be.
and it was reiterated on I think the last not workshop, but conference meeting, and consensus was 3-2 to still move forward with the original.
Correct.
The question is, can the BAB sometimes say to the city commission, we think you're making a bad decision, or is that off limit? Based upon rational conversation, obviously. That's the question, basically.
How do we know it's a bad decision?
I was gonna say, I don't necessarily know that it is a bad decision.
Yeah.
Well, a decision with repercussions on the residents' burden and on the already growth, very important growth of the government that we're trying to address. So it's sort of a compound effect. And it's part of the picture because if eventually residents pay for this, there is no miracle.
But they pay regardless of the option that they choose. So then we really would have to get into something that's, I think, well past that point, which is
Well,
of choosing all
$200
of these.
million or $700 million, that's not the same payment for the residents.
I
you
do have,
talking
I
about-
do have one comment, Chair, just when you have a minute.
Go ahead, Melinda.
No, I appreciate everyone's input. I completely agree. Sorry, I can't tell who's talking sometimes. That the communication should be positive. That we want to be engaged. We want to be involved in this. We, personally receive questions on this. I understand the infrastructure task force did do quite a bit of work on engaging the public on City Hall several years ago. That was without the numbers we have today. That was in concept theories, design, wish list. And we have some very hard numbers now that are coming forth. I mean, the city manager memos are very clear. You can access them on her website. I am very concerned, and I do just want, as a point of information, to let you probably already know this, but next week, starting April 20, the legislators are back in Tallahassee to decide the future of property taxes. Obviously, that goes to a referendum later in the year to the public, but the timing is very tight. And I guess I just want to emphasize again that, signing an agreement on Tuesday, I'm not saying we should take an opinion, but my opinion is that it should be delayed. I do not think we should be in any way rushing this, given the timing of everything happening in Tallahassee with property taxes. And I just think that we should, as everyone has agreed, very professionally and very optimistically ask that we be engaged in something that I think is definitely part of our purview. Thank you.
So you said they're meeting on property tax next week in Tallahassee. I thought that there was a special session for the budget that got canceled. And I think the only thing they're looking at now is redistricting. I have not heard of anything.
I believe you're correct on their district.
Yeah,
It was me.
that's the,
Chip LaMarca, that was his communication to me last week. I mean, maybe something has changed. But that was his communication to me last week about property taxes.
Regardless, we need to be prepared to a change, whatever direction it goes. And I think that falls into the same big picture of the burden of the city cost and expenses. We spent an entire session sharing everybody's input to that regards, expenses versus revenue, how to do the balancing act. And I think that should be part of the picture.
Just to refresh everyone's memory, several years ago when the city and county were looking at doing a joint government center, the price tag of that government center jointly was a $900 million project. Now we're doing a project on our own, and for 200 and is it 200 and how many million are you?
274.
It's 274 million.
Well, some people have facts that I don't have, so that would be really necessary. We all have the same access to the same information.
So, and I think it's a spread over a 30-year period. Well, if you were to buy a $274 million home and finance it over 30 years, what would your finance cost be you're in the real estate business?
724.8 million over 30 years.
On a home, if it was a 200, yeah.
The 274 becomes 700 million.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true, Chair. We don't have all of the figures, and and there's so much speculation on this, but I have heard, obviously, 200 million is not achievable. It's looking much higher than that. And there's, facts out there that are suggesting an obligation to the community of up to 800 million over time. So I'm not saying these are, this is what is circulating out there. And that's why I just feel we should positively approach the subject, get the facts, and be involved.
Okay, well.
The ever-changing facts.
Yeah,
So
the
everybody's kind of
ever-changing
involved.
facts, as Rich said, so staff will supply us what they have. Thank you for doing that and accepting our recommendation.
And the chairman will convey a positive interest into being part of that conversation. Correct?
And change
Based
tax.
upon any action on Tuesday.
Yeah,
For the
depending
commission.
on the dynamics, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
On the agenda?
We had your revenue estimating conference.
Yeah, you missed
That was, no, that was part in the budget, the tracking thing, okay. Very good. Chair would like to know who plans on attending Tuesday?
Possibly.
Okay, Belinda, Probably.
I am uncertain at the moment, but I will try if I am able to.
Okay,
I'll probably be.
so
I mean.
So
I
11
will work with staff between now and Tuesday to put together our comments to the commission, excluding the city hall issue. That will be incorporated somehow, but on the other, everything else.
Cool.
Yeah, wow. 2 more. I apologize to staff. I said, we're gonna get out in 2 hours tonight. Wow.
Did you see the materials that we had? I mean, there was a lot to share.
Let me just thank everyone for their input, their work. It really shows the high level of quality. So is there a motion to adjourn since staff and everyone's getting home?
Motion to adjourn before everybody leave the room.
We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.